Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Stranded Survivors. My name is Matt. I'm one of your co-hosts.
Hey, Stranded Survivors, I'm Steven, another one of your co-hosts, and today we are actually having another guest on. You guys might know him as Hopp. He's in the Discord on quite a bit. Introduce yourself, man.
Hi, I'm Hopp. I'm in the Discord quite a lot.
Yeah, we're
Wow.
happy to have you here again, Hob. We have had you a few times. We have you at least once a season. So we got a new season going. So we got to start off strong. Have you on here. Make sure we get you. The those of you that are joining us, this is going to be goofy in the recording booth here because we're time traveling a bit. So this is part three of our mental health series, part three of three. This episode is coming out just after last week's Antonio Pepperonio, master builder of body and base episode. So this is the conclusion to our mental health trio. So Hop, thank you very much for coming here to round this out for us.
Oh no, it's my pleasure. I think this is a great topic to be digging into.
I'm excited.
Yeah. So I know we've talked about it a handful of times before, but Hop, can you just walk us through how did gaming become a big thing in your life? Did were you born with a controller in your hand, or what drove you to gaming in the first place?
I'm old, so and my wife hates when I say that, but it's constantly true. I'm old. I turned 51 later this year. I grew up in the pre-gaming era when gaming for us was actually going outside and playing basketball on an actually outside rim. That's what we
Yeah, I'm
did.
just kidding.
We
That
got
was
on
that
our
was a
bike and we
thing?
got lost. Oh, yeah, we got on our
No
bike
way.
and we
That was
got
a
lost
thing?
in
Oh
the
my
country.
gosh.
We would be lost for
Man.
10 hours. Parents didn't know where we were, and, we had to be home by dark or we'd get our butts beat with a belt. That's the way it was, and we liked it. Anyway, um,
And
yeah,
we
it
liked it, he says.
and we liked it. Yeah, I'm the old man. I'm already in the get off my lawn stage of my life. Anyway, um,
You and me both.
the gaming though, it's funny. I remember playing uh Commodore 64 at friends' houses when I would go over to their house. And one of them was lucky enough to be well off enough to have a Commodore 64. I played on that. I was a part of the generation that got the Apple IIs in the school for the first time. In order to be a part of it, you had to be deemed gifted and talented, and they would cord you off. It was usually about a quarter of your class. They would cord you off into a room with a lady who didn't know the computer much better than you did in second grade, and you all went through with those big giant floppy disks. And my favorite game was Lemonade Stand, where you actually set the price of and tried to make money selling lemonade, and you had to guess what weather would be and how much you would make. It was a lot of fun, and that's how it started. I've always enjoyed gaming. Eventually, I got to where I got my own Nintendo. Big deal in my house to get an Atari and then eventually a Nintendo. My parents were able to buy me a Nintendo, I guess, when I was in seventh grade. And the first two games I had were Super Mario Brothers slash Duck Hunt, that comes with the
Mhm.
system, and
Love Duck
Oh
Hunt.
yeah.
Mike Tyson's Punch Out. So
I loved that
Oh,
game.
old
dude, such
school
a good
Mike
game.
Tyson's Punch Out, the
Yeah,
original.
original. Such a
Love
good
that
game.
one. It really is. Even to this day, I will still put it in and play it every once in a while. Um,
You still have a
Absolutely.
working Atari?
I do not have an Atari. I do have an old 8-bit Nintendo. I also
Hey,
have a
me too.
Super Nintendo. I
Hey, me
have
too.
everything. I've got every PlayStation generation that's ever existed. I own, and now that I'm older, I can afford to buy them, but I don't have time to play them. And that's kind of
The
the
catch
funny thing
22,
about it.
right?
Yeah, it is, or in my case, the catch 50. But yeah,
Quit your job. Simple
it's
answer. Just quit your job.
definitely, yeah, no, yeah, that would go really well. A homeless gamer, and then I'd have nowhere to play, no electricity to hook it up to. I really
You could go to
liked it.
random McDonald's.
I've always enjoyed it. I've always enjoyed gaming. It's just something that's been fun for me, and I apologize if I say too much, but it's really a fun thing to discuss. But I got into it at a very young age. I even used to create my own baseball scores and basketball scores and ran seasons on pads of paper. So once video games got introduced to me, games like Tecmo Bowl and the NBA games and all of those baseball games, man, I was in heaven. Especially once they've got the memory to start keeping the stats for you.
Oh my gosh.
It was a
Yeah, I remember gaming before memory cards, and it was miserable.
Yeah, you either beat it or you started over.
Yeah, or you'd have to try to like leave the game on and hope it doesn't like overheat and or someone come by and turn it off. Yeah, I remember
I had
those.
a mother
Or
I had a
bumped
mother
it and
that would
caused it to
shut crap
freeze.
off as soon as I went to school. As soon as I went to school, she'd go in my room and shut it off, so I never could pull that off.
I would probably do the exact
I
same thing.
I
I'd walk into my kid's room and be like, waste of electricity, gosh darn it.
Yeah,
I
exactly
learned
right.
where like I was able to I'd like unplug the like cord so you I forgot what it's called, the AV cord, so you couldn't see the picture but the system was still on, and I'd kind of like
Oh,
try
Ah,
clever.
hiding and I'd hide the system so you couldn't readily, you would have to look for it
nice.
to see if it was on and stuff like that.
You were sneaky.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
Good stuff.
tell,
Good
tell
stuff.
me you got in trouble a lot without telling me.
I just did.
Yeah, you know what? Touche. That's fair enough. So, Hop, you
uh,
got a background in theology. For the people that don't know it, can
Yeah.
you fill everyone in on your theology background?
Yeah, I went to college, to be a youth minister back in the '90s. Um, Graduated way back in '93. And of course, in
oh,
true uh, underachiever status, I managed to do a 4-year degree in 5 years and graduated in '98 with my undergrad. Um, then I spent years in youth. I spent like 5 years in youth ministry, which is fun. I loved youth ministry, but again, I just ended up growing into some other stuff and went into the preaching side of it. Got a master's degree, a master's in the sacred literature. Moved into that stuff. I never desired a doctorate. Everyone said I should have done it. I probably could have been a college professor at a Bible college or university somewhere, but I just never really wanted the word doctor in front of my name for some reason. It just felt weird being in ministry, and maybe it's because the guy I worked with when I was a youth minister, he was the preacher, and he made sure everybody called him doctor. I earned my degree. He was a trip. Anyway, but yeah, he that just kind of ward me off of that. But yeah, I've got both a bachelor's and a master's in theology fields. I spent 20 years in full time ministry, 5 years in youth ministry, 15 years in the preaching ministry in multiple different states, and now I'm currently, while I'm doing my job as a field rep, helping with inventory losses for those that suffer fires and floods and tornadoes and etc. I still part time preach on the weekends. So,
How does that
okay.
influence your? Sorry, I keep beating you to it, Stephen. How does that influence your streaming and stuff like that? Like, how do those two things
um,
blend in?
well, number one, it automatically, when it comes to streaming, you want to care about the people that are coming into your streams anyway. There's a natural amount of kindness, compassion, and etc. that you want to show if you're a streamer, unless like some of the other big namers like Doctor Disrespect or whatever that basically their whole shtick is being jerks. That's not me. Um, so the theology part influences because it's who I am. I'm gonna be a family friendly streamer. You're not gonna hear me, go on blue streaks and go nuts. I'm not gonna run. I don't care for if people do that in their streams or whatever. That's their decision to do. But for mine, I let it influence me, and I like to be the same person I am, whether I'm in the pulpit or out of the pulpit, whether I'm on my job or not on my job, whether I'm streaming or not. I've always found that staying the same, just not trying to create a whole new personality, makes things a lot easier. That way, you're not trying to like constantly keep up appearances for one direction or another.
Such good advice for life in general.
I try to keep things pretty simple.
Way to do it though.
Yeah, yeah. The streaming part that all started with my son, um, back during the pandemic. I mean, he was 13, going on 14. He thought it'd be fun to do it, and I was like, "Well, we can start a channel. I'm okay with that." And we did. It was called Hop Gaming, and we started a channel together. And we weren't streaming at the time. We were just making videos, and then we decided to do Twitch. And we actually got to where we were running like WWE shows, and we were the announcers while we're running
Oh,
these
that'd be
shows.
cool.
And I even got to where I did a Vince McMahon impersonation. He hated it. And I mean, we just had a lot of fun with it. It was very embarrassing for him because I'm very much an extroverted introvert, if we could say that. You're
What an
not gonna
oxymoron.
get. I have no filter. Um, I don't always share every little thing that's going on in life with me. That's the introvert part of me. But I literally will become the peacock of a room when I walk in. Now, in ministry, that worked out really well because everybody wants to talk to the preacher anyway. So, you walk in, you just start talking to people. Um, I'm a loud individual. God bless me with a very loud voice, as you could probably tell sometimes with the microphones and stuff and the way things go with my streams and videos. My voice sometimes has to be weirdly moved around because I'm, I'm so loud in general. When I was a kid, they would hear me from one side of the building to the other, just talking normal. So uh, that that characteristic comes out, but it plays really well for streaming, and that's what got me into that. Now, once he decided he was kind of over it, which was give or take about 3.5 years ago, when I got out of full time ministry, ironically, um, he didn't want to do it anymore. Didn't want to stream anymore. He had other things on his mind, friends he was making and whatnot in his own life, and so I just decided I was going to focus on Arc, and that's what led to that. But yeah, that's where that stuff comes from as far as the streaming part.
That's solid. I
Okay.
like how yeah, I like how you connect those two things together to make, big picture of the same person. Too many times, like you said, Dr. Disrespect always goes crazy, and I just don't like it when people want to be somebody else. It's weird when you know somebody
Yeah.
outside of their stream and then you see them and they're just weird.
Yeah, it is that way. And there are people in the streaming world and interact with that you can when you meet them and you talk to them away from a public setting, whether it be in a just a voice chat like this without a recording going on or whatever. They are vastly different. Um Me, I'm just as crazy as I always am. So
Hey, that's fair. I can respect that. I can appreciate that. Now, when we talk about spiritual health and, spirituality and all those things in general, in, in a broad sense to you, what does spiritual health mean to you?
spiritual health, honestly, when it comes to the idea of both of mental and spiritual health is going to have a lot, just as much of a calming influence over how you're going to react emotionally, how you're going to react mentally, how calm you're going to stay, or how crazy you can get. Um, and I say that in a broad sense because if you're a streamer and you're in the middle of, oh, I don't know.
Oh, did we lose him?
I don't know. Hello?
I look at it like a when it comes to spiritual health, you feel you're in the right place. You're comfortable in most areas around you. Now, do you know you're perfect? No. But there's just something when your spirit is not right, it affects every other area. And I think it's the same way for the other areas too. I think the other people will tell you the same thing when they have those discussions. I'm sure Antonio uh, would have said the same thing that, if you're just physically unhealthy, it's going to be hard to stay spiritually and mentally as sharp as you could be. And I think it's the same way for all of them. I think there's a an equilibrium that needs to be found in life, one way or the other.
So, kind of going off that, how do you go about exploring and strengthening your spiritual health no matter your beliefs?
Well, for me, I'll talk about from my perspective and how I do it. My beliefs are going to be different from others, but sometimes the core is still the same. And when I say the core, I
Yeah.
think about, first of all, practicing the tenets of your belief. Um, Myself as a basic non-denominational Christian that doesn't have anything but, like, the local church and then sticking to the Bible. It's just making sure that I am in the Word, making sure that I am, praying, making sure that I'm active with the people that I'm lucky enough to be asked to preach to and be a part of and to help along. And there's a lot of things like that that are all entwined in that. Other beliefs have different tenets. If I remember right, I think Islam even has like 5 tenets that have to be followed, and Catholicism has specific things that must be done, and Buddhism has certain things that must be done. It doesn't matter what your belief system is, though. If you're going to stay spiritually sound, the idea is you're spiritually sound within your system, so you need to be adhering to it. You need to be investing in it. You're not going to get anything out of it if you're not putting anything into it. I don't grow
Yeah.
unless I'm praying and studying and doing all those things. I don't. It's the same thing and at that point, it doesn't matter what direction you're going. Now that's not me saying, "Oh, we're all trying to get the same place. We're just using different ways to get." That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is, if you're going to sit down and try to be spiritually healthy, whatever bend you are in that way, you need to be investing in it. And that could be, anyway. I mean, if you look at what recognized religions are, ironically, Wiccanism, Satanism, and stuff are also on that same list as Catholics, Christians, Methodists, Buddhists, and Hindus. They're all on the same national list of recognized religions. So you have to
Yeah.
understand, if whatever you're going to buy into, if you're going to be spiritually healthy in your life, then you need to actually invest in it and make a point to make it a part of your routine in whatever way will help advance that spiritual movement that keeps you centered in that way.
Now, yeah, I completely agree with you. I completely agree. I am a Buddhist, and it's something that doesn't necessarily come naturally to me. There's a lot of things associated with it that don't come naturally that you have to physically work towards, and it's a
Hmm.
lot of conscious effort involved in making these lifestyle changes. So, knowing that, why do you think that, people are so quick to jump up and be like, dang, I'm sad, I need to go to therapy, or gee whiz, I'm unhealthy, I need to start working out more. Very, very, very rarely do you hear someone say, oh man, I'm not a well-rounded individual, I should look into a spiritual belief exercise. Like, I just don't hear that as often. Why do you think that is?
Honestly, I think there's a lot of stigmas. The same reason you don't. It's only been in the last 5 or 10 years that people have openly talked more about therapy in general. Used to be, I mean, I don't know if you all watch The Sopranos, but do you remember how when he felt when he first started to see Melfi? He didn't want it known. He didn't want anybody to know. He thought that everybody would look at it as, I mean, that's how people thought of that stuff. Um, Nothing wrong with seeking help. Sometimes the help is needed for help.
Yeah.
When it comes to the spiritual side of things, the other stigma with that is partly, and this is not to go on a rant of, "Oh, man, things have changed so much in the last 50 years," but
Go on the rant.
as
It's okay.
as a whole, spirituality has become a key emphasized part of regular life. When towns were first created, you can go back and look at all this, but as the westward expansion, towns would be built. For crying out loud, you even saw it when you watched like Little House on the Prairie talk about things like this. The church building was the first building that was built in the middle of town, and it doubled as a school. You know what I'm saying? And the town was then kind of
Mhm.
built around it doubled as a school. It was the courthouse. It was the it was the central building in the town. I and you went to church. That was just, everybody went to church and everybody that's just it was a natural part of life. I move into the idea of whenever I was a kid, and keep in mind I was born in the mid 70s. I was started school in the 80s. And once I got into school, it was still unusual for us as kids to not have a church we were somehow connected to, either because our parents took us or our grandparents, aunts, and uncles took us. But somebody was taking us most weeks. Maybe not every week, but most weeks. And so your basic understanding of faith questions. And I'm sure it was this way with other denominations and beliefs and things like that as well. But the basic understanding of what some of the basic Bible stories that we hear about, Noah's Ark and all that stuff. We all understood those. You could make a reference of, um, the toppling of, toppling the giant, and people understood what was being referenced there, even if it was being used in a sports context. I mean, we understood that stuff. By the
My
time I
counter
was a
to
youth
that point
minister. Oh, go ahead.
my counter to that point real quick is the diversification of the world. That was more of a time where you conformed or you were an outcast. You know what I mean? Not necessarily the 70s, but in the initial time period where, the first building you built was the church, either you were a member of the church or you were an outcast and you could not get a
Yeah,
job. You weren't going to get loans. You weren't going to get anything. So it was basically conform or kick rocks. And I feel
yeah,
like nowadays we don't see that, nobody, if you say, oh, I'm going to, get my sling, I got to go slay a giant. Like, not everybody's going to get that reference because
yeah.
maybe my dad's family is Jewish and my mom's
Hmm.
family is Catholic and my family's Buddhist. So like what a four-letter word religion can be sometimes.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And so as we've, I like using big words every once in a while. It shows I'm educated. But one of the great statements that was ever made was, that in a way we're kind of a polyglot society. In other words, we are a grouping of people that come together and that's the great experiment that is America. Um, and so because of that, you're right. It was conform or die back then. But also everybody kind of had the same belief systems to start with. Uh, Now I'm not even talking about individual belief systems. I'm just talking about in general. Kids don't even really talk faith very often. By the time I was a youth minister, what kids understood or how often they would want to go to church or were going to church was one third of what it was when I was in school that age, and that was only 20-year difference.
We're not allowed to
Because
talk about it anymore.
yeah, well,
It
yeah, that
became
was
a
the
big
other
thing of
thing.
don't ask Johnny,
It
don't ask Johnny.
became yeah, I when I was a youth minister, there was a school that would not allow their kids. This isn't even about the ministers who would visit. They wouldn't even allow their kids to have their Bible open and talk to somebody because they could be trying to proselytize their faith to somebody else. And
Yeah.
so
Was that one reason why you kind of got out of ministry is because of all
no,
the political stuff out of it, or
not
that
really.
didn't really have anything to do with it?
Part of it was more of a the way finances are in the world right now. It became difficult even with even with having housing provided by the church, the amount that you're making with even with just one kid. Some of these ministers that have 4 and 5 kids, I don't know how they stay alive. I really don't, because I know they're in churches that was the same size as mine, and they've got 4 extra mouths to feed. I don't know how, and so that was one of the reasons to get out of full time. I'm never leaving the ministry, as I just transitioned into a part time at a different place, and I went part time. I'm still getting to do ministry. It just doesn't. It's not a 70 hour a week thing anymore, which is kind of what it was when I was full time. I mean, really, it's 24/7. You could call any time, and the minister's got to be available. So, but that was a big change. Now, the big issue with that today is it's just not something everybody wants to make it individual. We have a society now where everybody's almost afraid to disagree with each other too loudly.
You'll get canceled.
Um, it's a weird world we live in right now, and religion is just one of those things. And I'm not even talking about religion. Spiritual discussions, everybody
Yeah.
wants to internalize them. They don't understand that you can have discussions on, you know, faith-based things, spiritual-based things, and not come away with hatred for one another, or not come away with a disliking, or somehow a lessening of anybody. And I think that's one of the problems really as a whole. And it's not just spiritually. I mean, I think there's a lot of reasons that that same type of thinking is out there right now, especially in the last 3 to 5 years.
So
But
I got a
yeah,
quick question for you on that.
sure.
Kind of on that. So we're talking about religion and everything like that, and talked about a little bit of gaming and streaming. How do you tie them all together? Your mental health, your streaming and or games, and your spiritual, because they're all
Well,
very, very vastly different, but also can be all very connected.
you you're still a whole person, but there are compartments of your life that and interests that need to be fed. I love sports. I will do something to channel that love of sports, whether it be watch part of a game, check ESPN.com, whatever, and find that out. But it doesn't take up my whole day. It doesn't become, the only thing. I have who I am is very tied into the spiritual part of life. But I literally do not just sit in a corner and read and pray all day. And the same thing with gaming. I like to have fun. I enjoy playing games. I enjoy streaming. I enjoy interacting with people. The interacting with people is the same when you're in ministry. You get to interact with people. You get to find out about them. You get to learn about them. You get to see, how you can show them some love, and how you can help them. Uh, Move to their next step, or whatever they seem to be looking for in any way you possibly can. I think in streaming it's very similar. Um, People come to watch
Yeah.
you partially because you're entertaining. Okay, that's great. I like to be entertaining, but I also want people to know that, yeah, if you come and interact with me, and I actually do care about what happens with you. I have checked in, with people afterward, because I want to, I find out that there's something actually going on with their life. There is somebody who comes to my streams who I didn't even realize was religious in any way, shape, or form. She comes into the stream, she watches the stream for a little while. She's not one that can sit and watch forever. She does videos more than she does streams. And then out of nowhere, I get messages about, hey, can you, pray for this? This member of my family is not doing very well. Can you pray for that? Sure, absolutely. Now, is that a part of my streaming? No, it's not done on stream. But I still feel it's a part of my streaming, because it's somebody who was in the audience of a stream who reached out to me over a Discord message and still asked me to pray in whatever way that I pray. I'm not even sure we have the same faith base. I mean, he could, be way out in the middle of something different from me, you know what I'm saying? But
Mhm.
the fact that there was that, to me, that ties those together, but it also scratches those itches of our life that we enjoy. Um, God never said that we had to be boring people. There's not one single shred of scripture that'll tell you that we are to be boring. Um, we are to be moral, and for some people, that's boring. Honestly, for some people, trying to live a moral, ethical life is boring. I get that, but that's not what's being talked about there. God did not say we had to be
So,
boring. We
so
can
with the
do things
morals,
and have fun.
so with the morals point of view, do you believe everyone like when it comes to their religion and who they are, everyone has different morals that they should try to follow?
I think at their core, there's a most of the religious beliefs out there have a lot of the same moral codes. They really do. You go through
Yeah.
and look
It's really
you
what
go through and look, there's a lot of the base moral about being good to one another, taking care of one another. Um, there's a
not
lot of
stealing, not
base
lying.
don't kill people. I mean, it's pretty
Yeah.
simple. Some of that stuff is very, straightforward. And every single religious belief has that. To me, that's one of those things. Do we agree on everything? No. But again, I also say if we literally agreed with everything in every aspect of every part of our lives, it would be the most boring existence known to man. So I
Mhm.
really think that we have to understand, just because somebody has a different religious belief, that's not. I'm not going out of my way to smack them around and tell them they're wrong. That's not my
Now,
job.
how would you tie in, like, if someone's using gaming as a coping skill to deal
Mhm.
with their mental health and they're not really realizing that they're doing it, how do you feel they can try to take away a little bit of the gaming portion and use spiritual health to help try to heal them? What advice
Well,
would you give them, or how would you go about that if someone came to you?
you would have to really get to know them, because those are aspects of personality. There are certain people who operate better in a digital form. All right, that's fine. How about, we go and we find some Bible games to play against each other. By the way, there are a bunch of those things like Wordle, like, things that are more faith based. They have those things out there. Now, that scratches the gaming itch, but also gives a possibility of opening up for other dialogue. That's a very basic idea there. Um,
Hmm.
it depends on the
On
person. I mean, some people just don't like to read. All right, that's fine. I can find you.
That's
I'm
me.
sure. I'm sure there are YouTube channels. It's like books on tape. I'm the type of person, I like to read. I grew up just devouring books. But once I got to a certain age, I became a multitasker. Drives my family absolutely bonkers. But I could have the TV playing and I'm still playing games on my tablet, or I'm still writing something down on a piece of paper or whatever. And I'm not necessarily watching, but I'm watching. And if they were to
I
turn it
totally
off, I
get
would
that.
immediately know that they've turned it off. Or if my wife, sometimes she'll test me, she goes, "What did they just say?" I can tell them. Just half the time I'm rewatching stuff that I've watched 150 times. That's beside the point. It's I'm watching, and so I can multitask. Some people are like that. Some people, they don't like to read at all. They don't want to touch a book. The words on a page are annoying, but they can put something in the background, and for some reason it seeps in. If I paid attention to my professors in college intently, I did not pick up nearly as much. I was just looking down and doodling as I took notes and never looked up. I
You have
actually
ADD
I
by
actually
chance?
did more. Oh, yeah, I totally probably do. I've never really been
There we go.
tested,
Um,
but I would say
I,
I would say I'm definitely hyperactivity type stuff, yeah.
yeah, I have ADD and I'm dyslexic, so me, books, and reading do not go well together.
Mhm.
I don't have the patience to sit there and do it.
Yeah, and see, each person's different. That's why you have to get to know them. You can't just turn around and say, "Well, if you took 5 minutes every morning and just opened up the Psalms." You can't do that. Some people don't want to read. Books are scary to them for whatever reason, and I'm not saying they're scary to you, but I'm just saying in general, when you have bad experiences or your eyes don't work right, your brain and your eyes are just competing with each other and they don't work right, or you have a form of the spectrum, which can make certain types of media more difficult than others, or conversation completely and virtually impossible for a period of time until you really get to know somebody. There are so many things that are out there, um, that it's not a one-stop shop, and I don't think it's that way for anybody. I mean, if Antonio sat down with me, I'm a 300-pound dude. I am not.
Hmm.
I call myself Big Daddy Hop sometimes for a reason. It's not for any nefarious reason. It's because I'm a 300-pound dude. I literally am big. Um, Antonio
How
could
tall
not
are you?
walk up to me. 5'10" and change. I'm a big guy. I'm a big man. I'm not football player big. I mean, I'm like 6 inches too short to play football, but I'm not a small guy. But Antonio couldn't come up to me and go, "Op, let me tell you something. If you would just start doing, 200 push-ups and 100 sit-ups and blah 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 blah, man, I can get you cracked in no time." I'd be looking like, "Dude, you crazy." My doctor wants me to walk more. Yeah, I know. I understand that. My knees say no,
That being
at
said,
50 years old.
right there, no, that's such a good point. I mean, you can't. You only have so much in the tank. You have so much in your cup. You have so much to
Yeah.
give every week, and some weeks are worse than others. Right now I've got moving going on for us at work, so we've got
Mhm.
150, 200 people coming and going here and there, and you're just mentally exhausted some days and don't have as much in the
Mhm.
tank. So that being said, if your knees hurt, if you're tired, you just don't want to do it anymore. You don't have it in you to pick up a book and read some scripture or anything. How does intentional rest come into the picture of preserving your not only mental health but spiritual health? How can that all play together?
Oh, I think intentional rest is important. I think no matter how your brain absolutely needs the stimuli, sometimes you need that silence. Um,
Even if it means like silence from the spiritual aspect of it. Like if I've had a long day at work, I don't want to talk to anyone, so I'm not gonna plug my headset in playing Xbox. If you've had a long week and you just don't
yeah,
want to pray for the weekend, is it okay to just unplug and not check into your religion for a week?
I I would always caution a week, but I do know that there are times when part of a day just hits wrong, or I feel like garbage, like just physically I don't feel good because I'm either a little sick, my allergies are kicking up, whatever, or something bad is just crashing down, whether it be financial problems or whatever it may be. And there's in that moment, any stimuli does nothing but annoy me. I have this bad thing with RSD, so I will automatically assume the worst about anything someone tells me about myself. Even if they mean it as a compliment, I will find a way in my brain to interpret it negatively. And so when you have all that stuff happening and then stuff like that's happening, man, the best thing I could do is to completely unplug, put my tablet down, put my phone down, walk away from the computer, don't have media playing. If it's at nighttime, I just go sit on the couch, no lights are on, and I just kind of sit there. Now, sometimes it's 5 minutes, sometimes it's a half hour, whatever. But it's a moment that is just, it's almost like intermittent fasting in some ways. You just kind of chill. You stop the stimuli, you let your body and your mind and your spirit just kind of rest. None of them are being poked. there's no bears being challenged. You're not. And the thing is, scripturally speaking, we're even told, not to bring it all back around, but we're even told that God is very vocal in the silence. Now, what I have found is when I step back into life from those times, no matter how long they are, I usually am able to handle things, whatever they may be in that moment, better. Or I'm not as upset about the things that I assume were negative that were said to me, or whatever it may be. There's just something about that silence. If you want to look at it from a gaming perspective, man, sometimes turning the game off calms you.
So, so weapon someone feels like disconnected from their like inner values, sense of meaning, and just kind of like overall like cut off from everything. What practical first steps would you suggest? Try to get them back
Yeah,
into feeling
bluesies.
better,
What are you
back into
doozies?
First,
that. Yeah.
first and foremost, the Mr. Miyagi rule: stop and listen to your breath. I know that sounds funny, but the first thing you can appreciate is your breathing. You're still here. That alone means for whatever's going on in that moment, you're still tough enough to be breathing. And for some people, that's a very important thing to wrap their head around. The worst thing you can get into is starting to think, well, it doesn't matter if I'm breathing or not. Guess what? It does. And I think realizing that is a very important thing. So I've always taken that for some reason, Mr. Miyagi. I call it the Mr. Miyagi rule. I sit back and I'll take deep breaths and I literally listen to myself breathe. And the reason I do that is I'm still here. And I can make jokes after that. Well, I'm still here. I'm tougher than dirt, or whatever. But for whatever reason, just knowing that I'm still here. Obviously, I'm strong enough to put up a fight against whatever. That's the first step to me. And when you're feeling disconnected, why are you feeling disconnected? Sometimes you have to step away and stay calm and just try to look at it after you've had some moments in that calm. If you look at it while
Right.
you're still emotionally upset, you're not going to see anything rationally or positive. You're still angry. And so,
Okay.
however
So
long it takes you
listen
to calm
here.
down, you need to calm down.
All right. I like it. Now, all everyone listen in. So if you're feeling that way, do what he just suggested. Do the Mr. Miyagi. Listen to your breath. You're still here. Great advice. I loved it.
And
That's
then
perfect.
also find that person that you can talk to. In ministry, we had these things called accountability partners. They would be other ministers. If you connected with them on a friendship level, um, you would grow a friendship to where you could talk about anything. I'm struggling with this, and we're talking about deep stuff. I'm not talking about I just couldn't beat Mike Tyson and Mike Tyson's punch out and it just ticked me off. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the things that we really struggle with. I worry that my kids don't respect me. I worry that my job is taking advantage of me. I worry that, whatever, deep, deep stuff. And at that point, you have that. I think that that's possible no matter where you're at. It's not just a minister's thing. You can have that with friends. You can have that with family. You can have that with coworkers. Anybody, but it takes trust. If you find somebody like that, open up to them. If you can't find that person, reach out to me. You can find me. As we've already stated, I'm on Discord a lot. But I would much rather, and I know the meme is out there and it seems trite to say it. I would much rather spend a half an hour listening or an hour listening to how your world is falling apart and how you're just a crappy human being than to hear so and so, is no more because they just couldn't wrap their head around things.
Yeah, that doesn't end the pain. It just passes it on to somebody else. And
It really does.
unfortunately,
And I look at it like this. Have you ever have you ever gone caving? Have either of you ever
No,
gone
tight spaces.
caving?
No, thank you.
Um, there are caves in southern Indiana that are, you pay to go through them and you're led through them and they have scaffolding. You're safe all the way through. But there is a point, and Marengo Cave and Squire Boone and all these caves do it. There's a point where you get down to the inside and they shut off all the lighting that they have there just to show you how dark it is in the cave. When you do that, you can put your hand right in front of your face and you can't see it. And I always liken it to, and I've been close to this whenever I was much younger, but I liken it to what people must feel like when they get into that spiral. I don't believe it's selfish. I believe literally they get to where they could not, it's so black in their life, they couldn't see a helping hand if it was right in front of their face. And once they get to that point, rational decision making is gone. They truly believe that everybody's better without them, which is totally wrong. But yet they believe that because the blackness is around them. I'd rather make sure nobody ever gets to that point. But most of the time, I truly believe it is a desperate state, and it's such a scary state. And I always wonder sometimes, are they even in their right mind when they get to that? Are they actually able to say, "I'm perfectly competent of everything that's going on around me"? Nobody can answer that but them. So, and that's why I would much rather give up my time. I would rather give up anything I could possibly get than to let one person find their way into that blackness.
Because there's always a light.
Well, there's always a light that can be shined. You're just hoping that they can still
Hmm.
see it. You're just hoping they can still see it. That's all you're hoping for. And
Yeah,
and
like
I don't want anybody to ever get there. And I think that's why a series like this is very important. I think that's why it's good that we're touching on all these, because some people are more bent towards spiritual natures, but they're not workout freaks and they're not, whatever. Um, but they do bend more toward the spiritual side of things, and maybe that's something that they could lean into more to keep from going that other direction. For some, maybe it is the physical. Maybe finding that workout, finding that physical exertion that releases that dopamine that makes them feel alive again, gets them out of that blackness. I mean, I think it's important to understand just how important all these different areas are and what would be considered the whole person, um, inside and out. I think you've got to find some form of equilibrium, uh, that suits your personality, your mental makeup of how you deal with life.
I agree.
yeah, it's very, very personal journey that only you can decide what is right for you, but you just got to make sure you're taking those proactive steps like we had talked about earlier. On a lighter note, I want to try to ease up a little bit. And on a bit of a lighter note, Hop, what is a game that you've played recently or just in general in life that's unexpectedly taught you something, either about yourself or about life in general?
Um, I could easily go into arc here. Why not?
Yeah, perfect timing.
Uh, there is actually that great term. There's actually that great term that we have called getting arced.
Hmm.
Everybody knows what it is. Getting arced is when something happens due to the game, not necessarily because you did anything. Either you meshed somewhere and you can't get your stuff. The game literally crashes and you were in the air and you end up waking up and somehow you've dropped all the way down into the water you were flying over and sharks are biting your face. Whatever it may be, but it's an unforeseen thing that happens. And I have kind of learned that, getting arced is not just a thing that happens in art. It happens in life. I have walked into a board meeting and walked out unemployed. I think other people have walked into their office for that day and walked out without a job. I think some people have left in the morning and, their vehicle, for one reason or another, whether it be mechanical or accidental, didn't make it to the point B they were headed to. Unfortunately, and I hate saying this, some people kiss their loved ones goodbye and they're never able to hug them again. It happens. We get arced in life. And what that taught me in arc especially is that it's not the end of the game, because unfortunately you can respawn um and get arced all over again. But in reality for life, there's always an opportunity um to do better. I may mess something up. I can still do it better. I may not say the right thing to a person, but I can try again. One of the great phrases of ARC is, "We are the ones who try again." Guess what?
Helena.
Life will not always go the way you want to, but we can try again. We can try
Ooh,
again.
that's powerful. That is powerful.
That is powerful. No, that's powerful enough to wrap up right there. I feel like, holy crap. Do you have anything else to ask, Steven?
Hmm.
Because I feel like if there's a note to end on, it might be that one.
Nah, I think he said it perfectly. He said it perfectly.
Yeah, I mean that's it right there, folks. You heard it. You heard it from the trifecta. We got the body, we got the mind, we got the spirit all around. You're gonna get knocked down. You gotta keep getting up. You gotta keep trying again. Helena was onto something. Wildcard was onto something when they wrote that poetic line, and Hop sure as heck is onto it here. So, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you guys enjoyed this segment. It's been a bit of a heavy take and an interesting turn compared to what we normally do. But I really hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. I hope it helps you become a healthier gamer. And I hope you guys just keep on surviving in this crazy world we got.
There we go.
And that was a good end.